Yes, it definitely was. It was a game that, it started off somewhat promising. It felt like the confidence was there. It felt like, the Steelers were moving the ball up the field, and then they get into a situation where they get a field goal, and then it just kind of dies down after that. And they never just really got going after Kenny Pickett's injuries. It was also a game to add injury to insult is that, a lot of injuries ended up happening. Another inside linebacker out for extended period of time, Elandon Roberts, and his departure was well noticed. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals were attacking the middle of the field as soon as he was out, and Michael Walker and company there just couldn't step up to the plate, couldn't handle it at the standard. TJ Watt ended up going down for a little bit with a heel injury. We'll see how he is affected. It's a short week. Pittsburgh Steelers played New England Patriots this weekend or this Thursday night. None, and obviously another none bigger injury than to the quarterback who required surgery today, and he'll be out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. How big, if anything, is losing Kenny Pickett? I know he's been under a lot of scrutiny over the last couple of weeks. Last week he ended up having a really good game. Everybody was excited about it. And then now Jerry Dulac is reporting that after that Browns game, there was an opportunity or a possibility that Kenny Pickett was going to get benched due to his play. So how do you feel about Kenny Pickett's injury? How's it going to affect the team?
Well, as me and you talked before the show, I don't put a lot of stock in a lot of things Jer Bear says. From people that I know that know him, he's usually late on anything he does report. Definitely in this case. Now he said that after the game that Pickett would need to have something done to that high ankle sprain, which turned out to be tightrope surgery, whatever that means. But it does accelerate the healing process from a 4 to 6 week injury, oftentimes to a 2 and 3 week injury. So if that's the case, it makes sense. And he's had the surgery before. But this season's more of the same. It's been a wasted season because the season was supposed to be about evaluating Kenny Pickett to decide once and for all, is this the quarterback moving forward, or do the Steelers need to look elsewhere? And when you bring back the worst offensive coordinator that I've ever seen in my life, and I'm 53 years old, and there's no comparison, that's the worst offensive coordinator in Matt Canada I have ever seen. Well, you can't judge anything that Kenny Pickett did because of how terrible and atrocious the play calling was. Even yesterday, there was moments after Pickett left the game and during when he was in there where you had receivers standing right next to each other. The passing game concepts, you can't change everything. The damage is already done. Canada's offense is there. They're just trying to tweak it. And they've still got receivers almost running into each other or standing within 5 yards of each other, and you got the whole field to utilize.
I mean, but how much is that because, the design of the player? How much is it because of execution and these players just not developed enough to be to that point where they can have multiple options? There's been many times where Kenny Pickett throws it deep or throws it somewhere and Deontay Johnson is not on the same page with it. And that's wide receiver number one. So wide receiver number one.
But you're calling him that. I don't call him that.
Well, I mean, when it comes to receptions and targets and the X receiver being most of the time by himself on the outside, I don't think that maybe perhaps the Steelers don't have that wide receiver one. I think George Pickens could possibly end up being that guy later on, but the guy that you're supposed to have the most chemistry with, you're not on the right page. So I'm not surprised that multiple people aren't on the right page here. And but
nobody could get on the right page with that offense.
Right. But
it's everybody. All the players come out and talked about how that he would not even discuss with them the why, when, and where, and why. Because you need to know what, okay, if this is a third and four, and we're going to do this or this, depending on the defensive matchup. He didn't even discuss those things. Last week was the first time they said that the coordinators actually talked to them about the why. So, I mean, but I don't really want to talk a lot about Canada because we're past all that. I really don't want to talk a lot about Pickett because I believe if Pickett would not have got injured yesterday, he was getting into more of a rhythm. They just started to use Pat Freiermuth in the middle of the field, which is what was really holding them up to begin the game because they didn't do that like they did the week before. The strength of that Steelers offense, passing offense, is the tight ends. It's not Johnson and Pickens. And now, just when they started to, they were down at the 1 yard line and Pickett gets hurt. When Trubisky come in the game, I said, oh gosh, I dread doom and gloom when he comes in the game because there's going to be a turnover. Now, I don't know if it's going to be his fault or not, but you can guarantee there will be a turnover.
Now, I understand what you're saying, and I get all of that. The only thing is I think there's two things that can be right at the same time. I think that Matt Canada can be the worst offensive coordinator in the Pittsburgh Steelers history, and Kenny Pickett be number 32 amongst quarterbacks this year because of not just his offensive coordinator, but also his ability, his development, if you want to call it that. I mean, I get it. That's also on the coaches and things like that. But there were some, signs here that were that he wasn't going to be or that this entire quarterback class wasn't going to be great. There was, I think he wasn't even.
But yeah, we're getting off topic. None of this matters now. They've already drafted him. He's the first round pick. He's the quarterback. They don't have anybody else. But what are you going to say? Well, the receivers, they got two good receivers. Well, I don't even know if I'll say good receivers. They got two NFL caliber receivers, and that's it. The offensive line still can't pass block anybody. Now, they can run block pretty good now, but they still can't pass block anybody, and it don't matter which quarterback was in there. Pickett went out, Trubisky got nailed. I mean, there's so many weaknesses and problems on this team, and we're losing focus, but focusing on the wrong thing.